All right, good afternoon, everyone. It's around 3 o'clock 53. So I'm very glad that you're here watching this live or as a replay because today I'm going to really tackle something that like nobody's talking about. And yet I think that it's going to be fundamental to how people work and especially how they create wealth and abundance in the new economy. And so it's very exciting because we're going to talk about the scarcity economy, which is the traditional economy. But now that the internet is here, social media, digital technologies, there is the hope for everyone on the planet to create as much money as they want. But first of all, you have to understand this new abundant digital economy. So, first of all, let's examine the traditional economy so that you can understand the difference between the new economy and the old economy. So if we separate, for example, the two different um, economies, on the left hand side, we're going to have, let's say, the old economy or what I call the scarcity economy. And people are so ingrained in this idea of scarcity. Everyone, well, not everyone, but a lot of people are afraid. And so this is really based on fear. It could be fear of missing out. It could be fear that you're not good enough. And therefore, for example, some people don't show up. They have knowledge, they have success, but they're so afraid of being rejected. They're afraid of failure. And so they may be successful, they may be rich, but they're still controlled by fear. And so that's what the scarcity is all about. People are afraid of not being able to take care of their families, and therefore they will take any job, just to pay the mortgage. And it's the fear of, like, single people, for example, are afraid of missing out, and they live in this state of perpetual anxiety because they're single. But anyways, let's not go there because here we're going to talk more about work, money, finance, not so much about relationships. So this is the scarce economy, and I would even call it the scare city. So most people, including rich people, um, they live in the city called the scare city. They're afraid. They're contracting. They're not very creative because when you have anxiety, you eliminate creativity. You tend to blame, judge, criticize. So this is the scarcity economy, um, and it is so bad that very smart people, Elizabeth Holmes, Sam Bankman-Fried, Bernie Madoff, like even what's his name, Epstein. All these people are super smart, super rich, but they're so scared that they're hoarding their assets and resources. So, in a nutshell, this is a scarcity economy, and you don't want to be in that economy because once you understand what I'm going to be talking about here, you want to shift to a new economy. But the problem is that most people do not realize that there is another economy that is right beside the scarcity economy. So I would call it the abundant economy, for lack of a better word. And this economy is based on love, based on joy, based on sharing. Okay, this is very important. Based on transformation, especially self transformation. So it's not going to be that easy. It is simple, like a child could do it, but it seems complex to play in this abundant economy. It seems complex only because our ego are complex and our belief system is so rigid. All right. So here we have a very rigid belief system. It's so rigid, for example, that even very smart, very successful people like Warren Buffett would, or Jamie Dimon, the founder and CEO of JP Morgan. Um, how do you is that right? Jamie Dimon? Yeah. So even Jamie Dimon, uh, these people didn't believe in Bitcoin, um, but nowadays, like Jamie Dimon, for example, JP Morgan, they are putting up Bitcoin as collateral. So they have no choice but to embrace Bitcoin. Same thing with Warren Buffett and other rich people. But there are people, who were able to change their mind. For example, Michael Saylor, he was a critic of Bitcoin in 2000, I think 11 or 12, and after that he turned around, and since 2022 he became the chief proponent of Bitcoin. So it is possible to change your mind, and what's happening is that when you change your mind, when you change your rigid belief system, um, your life is going to change. So I don't know about your situation right now, but if you're struggling in some way with money, then you have to shift from this economy to a new economy. It's almost like a new world. It's a different worldview. Okay. And it's like you don't understand this new world. You don't understand this abundant economy. You don't understand the joy, the excitement that people in this economy they feel unless you've stepped into it. And so it requires that you actually go from this um, world to another world. And it's not easy because for the most part, what's happening is that people don't even see this new world that I'm talking about. It's like as if there's a cover and they just don't see it. The only thing they see is the scarcity economy. Like even people who believe in Bitcoin, which is great. I agree, it's great. They don't realize that Bitcoin is also scarcity based. And when I say scarcity, it's not necessarily a bad thing. It's a bad thing. It's the wrong mindset. So there is a case for right and wrong here. You have to be, you have to have judgment. You cannot stay away from right or wrong, or some would say suboptimal. Bitcoin, the scarcity mindset is wrong because there's so much in life, in nature, so much that of your economic and financial potential. Anyways, my point is that Bitcoin is scarcity based because there's ever going to be only 21 million Bitcoins. And so this is like saying that, in the world there's 8 billion people, but there's ever going to be only like 1 million pieces of bread, which is crazy. Like, how are you going to feed people, 8 billion people, when you have only 1 million pieces of bread? So to me, it's the same thing. Bitcoin is a great innovation because, it's going to preserve your wealth in the long term. It's not vulnerable to inflation, but Bitcoin is not the end game. It's a step. And so a lot of Bitcoin believers and holders, they don't understand yet that Bitcoin is scarcity based. They do understand that the value of Bitcoin is based on its scarcity, right? And so cryptocurrencies, any asset that is limited and that you cannot share, they are part of the scarcity economy. So let's look at the other asset classes. And by the way, guys, I know that not all of you are investors or not all of you have financial training, but don't worry, I'm going to keep it as simple as possible. But it's important to understand financial concepts so that you know what the economy is all about. The scarcity economy. This is really a bad economy, and I'm not shy about saying it's bad or it's wrong because you have to judge ultimately. If you're afraid of words like right or wrong, then you can say something like, it's not an economy for me. If you're the kind of person who doesn't want to say something is right or wrong, I'm not that kind of person. If this is wrong, I'm gonna put it in red. It's wrong, and you shouldn't be here. And this is what I tell my nieces and nephews, whoever wants to listen. I'm not imposing. I'm just telling you exactly what I see. I've read like over 1,000 business books. Well, not all business, but they're all nonfiction books. I've studied this for the last 30 years, and this is my conclusion. And it's my conclusion. This is how I see it. I don't have to impose my beliefs on anyone, but I just want to share with you if it resonates with you, if it helps you to think more clearly and to make more money and have more abundance, which is what I have in my life right now. I have freedom. I don't have to work anymore. Then, you can apply and you can see the results for yourself. You don't have to totally believe in the abundant economy the way that I believe in it. You just have to be a little bit willing to explore and not close your mind to what's going on in the abundant economy here. I'm going to put it in blue. And so these are two radically different thought systems. Okay, this is something we have to acknowledge. They're radically different in the sense that if you believe in one, you cannot believe in the other. Okay, so these are two uh, radically different belief system. And so what's happening is that if you have a belief system that is favoring, that is, focusing on the scarcity economy, every time that somebody will try to help you, you know, right away it's going to bounce off of your belief system, because this is a really highly integrated, self-reinforcing belief system. You can have like the Pope, you can have the Dalai Lama, you can have Warren Buffett, you can have like Elon Musk. They will try to help you, but they send you ideas, and right away it's going to bounce off your belief system. This is your belief system. Your belief system about the scarcity economy is so strong that it's not possible for anyone to penetrate that belief system. It's almost like in Star Trek, the race shields. It's like people can send photons to you, uh, shoot photons at your belief system, but it's going to bounce off because your belief system is so strong. It's so strong. But what happened in my case, I'm going to share with you very humbly, very vulnerably, is that there came a point, and it's probably going to be something similar in your case or in the case of a lot of people out there who are financially struggling. There came a point where I had no choice but to stop believing in this belief system, and I have no choice but to search for a new belief system. And that's when I discovered the abundant economy a couple of years ago. And that's why my life today is very much based on passion, love, joy, sharing, not just trading, um, and transformation. And I'm transforming myself in the four key areas of life. And so, but to get to this point where you live in an abundant world, you have to change your belief system, because these are two radically different belief systems. You can consider these two belief systems to be like the opposite sides of a coin. So as long as you're focusing on one side of the coin, so let's say we have a shape, let's see. So you have a coin like this, and right now maybe the only thing you see is scarcity. And of course you're scared, right? You're scared that you're going to lose your job because there's a limited number of jobs. It's all about scarcity. Because obviously there is a limited number of jobs, and chances are, because of AI, they're not going to create more jobs for young people. So it's a real objective thing, but you have to somehow switch the flip and switch to the other side where you can actually see the abundance. But as long as you're on this side, you're only going to see scarcity, right? So you have to really flip to the other side, and then you can see the abundance here. And when I say abundance, like guys, I really mean abundance. Like, I used to teach at Taft College from 2017 to 2022. I was making $80 an hour. But even for me, some people might say, wow, that's good money. You're just teaching, right? Yeah, I'm just teaching. I'm just telling jokes. And if you ask my students, I'm telling stories and jokes. I'm trying to entertain them. I was more like a entertainer. So it was not really working, So I'm being paid $80 an hour just to entertain young people. But $80 an hour for me, it's nothing. $800 an hour, it's nothing. I want like $8,000 an hour, like really. And I don't even want to work per hour. I want $8,000 per 0 hour of work. That's possible with the abundant economy. And so, like I said, it's really two sides of the same coin. And unless and until you realize that, your life is probably not going to change. So always think that it's two sides of the same coin. And right now you are living in scarcity, including rich people, including Bitcoin people who may think that they're very, very advanced. But and from my standpoint, they're still operating within the scarcity economy. They're still trying to make better trades, better decisions. But that's not, that's not the end game. Okay. But again, I'm not saying that the scarcity economy or Bitcoin is bad in itself. It's really just a step, but you got to go higher. So, you always need to go higher. So let me just show you here. So Bitcoin is over here, but it's like a stairway. You always need to go higher. And, you start with the scarcity economy. You start with Bitcoin and other asset classes, but you got to go up. You got to go up. You cannot just stay, in your Bitcoin world, or if you're in real estate, you can't just stay in it. You have to make progress and head toward the abundant economy. Okay, so let me first just talk about the traditional asset classes so that we know what we're talking about here. So the scarcity economy, um, the value comes from scarcity, right? So scarcity will create value. And of course, because the value goes higher, the prices will go up. So the value of any asset is dependent on how limited it is. So we have traditional asset classes, and I call them tax traditional asset classes. And these will be things like, let me just make a copy here. Traditional asset classes that all investors know. So let me just name them. You have the most robust, you have real estate, residential or commercial houses, condominiums, etc. You have gold, you have government bonds and corporate bonds. You have commodities, wheat, cattle's. You have shares in a publicly traded company or shares in a privately held company. You have, silver. You might have various metals. I'm not really familiar. Rare earth, for example. You have, of course, you have Bitcoin, and then you have other cryptocurrency. I used to hold Solana and Chainlink and Cardano, but I just left them. I just focus on Bitcoin. So I'm a small investor in Bitcoin myself. So I'm not, I'm not saying that you should sell off your Bitcoin. But the important thing to understand is that there is a new asset classes, and we have to, consider and study what they are if we are to benefit from these new asset classes. And I call them TICs. It's just a convenient handle or acronym. And TICs is where you're going to make enormous wealth if you understand what they are. Okay, so let me just put it down as my claim, my chief premise. This is you, like any ordinary person like you and I, where you can create enormous wealth and abundance for yourself and your family. So think about your kids, okay? Think about your kids, think about your family, your wife, etc. This is where you can make significant headway in achieving financial abundance, financial freedom, anything that you want, a house, a car, a beautiful woman, a handsome husband, anything that you want, kids, designer clothes, anything you want is going to come from TIC. So TICs really stands for technologies, and this is just a handle, it's just a broad category. I'm going to delve into greater detail later on, but it's technologies, information, knowledge, and communication. So I'm going to talk more about these three broad categories, but I'm putting them here so that you can see very clearly the difference between the two. And of course, this is really, really a big separation between the two. And you cannot really underestimate the extent to which people's belief system will literally prevent them. It prevents them from seeing the right hand side. Like very successful investors, whether it's Warren Buffett, Michael Saylor, who's investing in Bitcoin, whether it's Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk, Donald Trump, all these successful people, Satoshi Nakamoto, whoever he is, they're really focusing on the traditional asset classes. They're not really focused on TIC. There are billionaires who are focusing on TICs, and you know them. There's a Mark Cuban who became a billionaire after he created a company in the 1990s, broadcast.com, where he was able to live stream audio programs through the internet. There's Oprah, also a billionaire, and famously known for her TV show and magazine. So her TV show was licensed and broadcast through Harpo, her media company, and she was empowering like tens and even hundreds of millions of women worldwide. So she's using the power of media. Mark Cuban's the power of the internet or streaming on the internet. You have other people like Travis Kalanick, the founder of Uber. You have, what's his name? Brian Chesky, the founder and CEO of Airbnb. So I can go on because I've been studying these billionaires for a long time. I don't, my goal is to become a billionaire. Like, it's like going to Mars as opposed to going to the moon where you just become a millionaire. So I've been studying these guys, these women, and I noticed that there's a difference between these billionaires and the billionaires that we see here in the scarcity economy. So this is the abundant economy, the infinite economy, if you will. So the problem with the traditional asset classes is that they're traditional, they're limited. They're not taking into consideration the new technologies, including AI. They're not taking into consideration the value of information or the value of communications, including social media. They're largely operating in traditional industries. And so you have, very rich and powerful people. Oh yeah, I'm just going to put here Ted Turner. He's the founder of CNN. CNN, by the way, was created in 1980, but they lost money for 5 years and they were only profitable in 1985 with a net profit of $13 million. So I have detailed files on all these billionaires. So anyways, let's get back to traditional billionaires here. You have Rupert Murdoch. You have people who have made money from real estate mostly, and from shares in publicly traded company. You have Sam Walton, the founder of Walmart. Although I have to point out that people think that Walmart, it makes money because they have low prices, but that's not true. It's because they have an IT system and logistics that would make everything efficient. So the success of Walmart depends greatly on information technology. And so I'm going to talk more about this later on, but basically Walmart is selling physical products. So that's why I put them in the traditional asset classes here. So nothing wrong with these people who have made like a lot of money from real estate, from gold, from trading shares, from trading options. There's also Forex, where you're trading currencies and you're benefiting from arbitrage, meaning that you buy the US dollar or the British pound at a certain price, you buy low and you sell high. So famously, what's his name? Soros. What's his first name? I'm drawing a blank. Must be Alzheimer. It's not Charles Soros. George Soros. Yeah. So he made money with that. You have real estate. Robert Allen, and like even Donald Trump, right, made money with real estate. And so for these asset classes, I don't know, but every time you see a billionaire, they probably made money with traditional asset classes. And again, nothing wrong with that. Okay. There's of course my favorite, Ray Dalio, because he wrote the book Principles. Everyone should read that book. Extremely wise, extremely practical. But Ray became a billionaire because he's he runs a hedge fund, the largest hedge fund according to one metric called Bridgewater and Associates. And fascinating. Ray Dalio is a kind man, a wise man. His advice is sought by head states all over the world. So he's one of the few traditional billionaires that I really admire because of his wisdom. But you have other, people here. Could be Jeff Bezos. Although I'm not sure. I think Jeff Bezos belongs more in this camp because, Amazon is really internet based. And so my point is that when you study rich people, billionaires, and you should, right? Because if you don't study these billionaires, or you could study millionaires as well, it means that subconsciously you're telling your mind, I'm never going to become rich. And therefore, what is the point of studying billionaires? So just by studying these billionaires, I've been able to make a lot of money and create new businesses and projects and products that I would normally, not come up with. And so I'll talk more about that. But the important thing here is that you have to understand that there are two different financial categories, if you will: the traditional asset classes, and this is what we all know, and then there's the new asset classes focused on technologies, information, knowledge, communication, social media. And I guess because I like analogies, I like to offer simple examples that will show people like the difference between these two. And again, I'm very much into drawing distinctions. And so some people might shy away from saying this is right, this is wrong. I don't, because what I've learned from Tony Robbins in his book Awaken the Giant Within, he said that successful people, especially highly successful people, they have the skill where they can focus on distinctions. They know the key distinctions. Distinctions are basically sharp classification or sharp definition that enable you to judge, evaluate between two or more than two options, and then select the right one. So there is right and wrong. So I'm saying that this is wrong and this is right. And so I am intellectually confident enough to tell people, look, if you're here in the scarcity economy, you're afraid of missing out. And for example, even AI, a lot of people get into AI out of fear and not out of love. You're not creative. You have a rigid belief system. That's wrong. That's suboptimal. And so what I teach my students and clients and more through live streams like this one, I want to help them to make the transition from the scarcity economy here to the abundant economy. This is where you want to be. This is not that different, by the way, from how my own father became a self-made millionaire in the 1950s in Vietnam. Because so I'm going to talk about my father a little bit. What he did, which I thought a lot about, because what I do is that I study rich and successful people, and I go up the abstraction ladder in order to identify exactly like how were they able to become successful. So what my father did was that in the 1950s, I think around 1954, Vietnam was cut into half because of not the Geneva, I think the Versailles agreement or accord. And so there was this thing called South Vietnam where it was more like pro-Western. It was supported by United States, and there's this thing in Hanoi in the South called South Vietnam. So when they divided the Vietnam into two sections, North and South, they gave people like a few months to move. So anyone who's not aligned with socialist and communist the regime in South Vietnam, which is backed by, I think, China and Russia. I'm not sure. I have to verify that, but it was a socialist country. Ho Chi Minh, for example, the leader, the socialist leader. People had like a couple of, months to move, and if you don't move to uh, to South Vietnam and start over your new life, then you're going to be stuck in the old socialist uh, part of Vietnam. And so what my father did was brilliant, because he basically created a taxi company that helped people with transportation. And as you can imagine, in those days, uh, there was no buses, there was no metro system. Today in Vietnam, in I think in Saigon, which is now called Ho Chi Minh City, there is a metro system. But in the 1950s, there was no, buses, no uh, metro, and so I think no train. And so what my father did, I have to ask my mom the name of the company, but he created a taxi company, and of course people would hop on a taxi. It's not that expensive. It's very convenient, and so they can move around. So it was a time in the 1950s of a lot of moving around, and so he started a taxi company. And what he did, which is very inspiring to me, like he took like old cars, and he had a friend who was a mechanic, and they would refurbish the car and really fix it and paint it so that it becomes a polished taxi car. And he had like a fleet of like about 100 cars, and he would rent out those cars to the taxi drivers, and they were making so much money in those days that after a month or two they were able to buy the car, and then after that they were working for my father as a driver. And so he made a fortune. How? By just helping people, to move from the south to the sorry from the north to the south. And it's just moving bodies. Okay, he was moving bodies from the North Vietnam down to the south, and that's how he made a smart fortune. And he bought real estate. He bought like 3 or 4 houses, diamonds, lands, any asset that is really valuable. And so, you know, I, in a similar manner to my father, I want to help people to move from the, from this, from an area in the world where you're not making a lot of money because it's almost like socialist. And I want to help people to move to the new world, the new abundant economy, going from left to right. So that's what I want to help you with in this live stream. I know that many people, including my successful and multimillionaire friends who are investors, they're going to have strong resistance because they're going to see this as an attack on their belief system. But it's not an attack because, like I said, I myself, I'm a small investor in Bitcoin. So I knew everything about Bitcoin in 2016. I spent a month, watching all the videos on Bitcoin. Um, and so I'm not attacking really, but I'm just saying, look, you have a choice now between the scarcity and the abundant economy. Okay. And I guess what one quote that I can share with you to really summarize the difference between these two economy, it comes from Robert G. Allen, who's a successful multimillionaire. You can check him out. I read a book. I think he wrote Multiple Sources of Income. Highly recommend that book. It's going to open your eyes to your economic and financial potential. But anyways, Robert Allen said something very interesting. I think it's worth noting. So it's an order of magnitude. Most people will read this and they will not actually understand what he's talking about. So let me just unpack that for you, because even myself, I didn't really understand until I started teaching and making $80 an hour. And today I teach on the internet. I'm reaching like, thousands and eventually millions of people through live streaming on YouTube. So basically what Robert is saying is that he made a lot of money providing a service. So, right? He's selling real estate, but it's really a service, because you're not just selling a widget. You have to take care of customers, and have to sell and you have to serve them. But he also says that he made hundreds of millions of dollars by teaching people. So teaching is not the same thing as selling or providing a service. Okay, teaching people how to sell real estate, um, and therefore, teaching is about information. So we can see that here. Where is it? Yeah, we can see that teaching is about information. It's about knowledge. And so if you're a teacher, you should be quite rich. Why? Because if you're a teacher, then your knowledge can go out to people all over the world. And there's basically, theoretically, like no ending to how much money you can make. So let's say this is your knowledge, right? And it's a spiral because it keeps growing. Um, if you're a teacher, you should be able to make tons of money because from this core knowledge, you're going to expand outward. So here it could be a video course. Here it could be a Zoom webinar. Here it could be an ebook. Here it could be a membership site. There are so many ways for you to make money, and that is just from your information, from your knowledge. Okay, so just going to put it down here. This is your knowledge, and of course, once you start making money, you're very motivated to keep developing your knowledge. So this is your I would call it critical or useful knowledge. And this is not the same thing as the information that you get from ChatGPT. And so we're going to see later on the difference between knowledge and information. But let me just put it down here so that I can remember. Knowledge is extremely powerful, but information is not that powerful. And by the way, that's why you're getting ChatGPT for free. ChatGPT is extremely smart, but it's offering you information. If ChatGPT was offering you real knowledge, Sam Altman would be charging you like $100 or $200 per month, but it's not offering knowledge. Okay, it's just information. This is such a critical distinction that nobody has ever told you or taught you, and I'm going to teach you shortly. But so anyways, here you have critical or useful knowledge, and you can expand, you can radiate, you can publish, you can broadcast, you can teach that useful knowledge through, you can start with a Zoom, which is very easy. Ask me anything sessions or a course, a webinar on Zoom. And after that, your Zoom session is recorded. It becomes a video tutorial clip. Eventually it can become like a courses if you structure it correctly by using a video editing software, which I highly recommend. It's called Camtasia. And so that's yet another way for you to broadcast your useful knowledge, right? Zoom is for live video tutorials. You can sell this on teachable.com, Udemy, etc., and you can make money while you're sleeping. You cannot make money while you're sleeping on Zoom because you have to show up in a Zoom session, right? But the good news is that you can also make money by live streaming. A lot of people are doing this, and I recommend live streaming on YouTube because YouTube keeps your videos, your live streams afterwards. Facebook only keeps your live streams for 30 days, which is strange, right? And when you live stream, you can actually be in the live stream through your webcam, so it's really live, or it can be something where it's not really live, it's simulated. So simulated live streaming means that you're playing a pre-recorded video on your machine. So you're playing the video, and inside the video you might appear and people see your face, but it's not you. It's a video of you. So this is pretty good because it's simulated. People have the feeling, hey, it's Peter, but no, it's not me. It's a video of me, right? I'm sleeping, I'm cooking, I'm traveling all over the world, but it's not me. It's my video playing. But it's interactive in the sense that people can ask questions in the chat, and I'm going to have agents who will answer their questions in the chat. So they might think that it's me, but it's not me. It's just my agents, my associates responding to their questions in the chat section. There are other ways to broadcast your critical or useful knowledge. You can do it in a live classroom. This is what I've done at Taft College, an excellent Jewish college teaching digital marketing. You can do so, of course, through ebooks or actual books, sometimes a print book is more useful, you can do so through web applications, video games, and all of these can be generated by large language models or AIs out there. And this is just the beginning, guys. I've identified like over 100 ways in which you can package, right? You can package your useful and critical knowledge and you can sell. So all of these, formats will make money for you. And all of this is just part of the information knowledge that I'm talking about here. So can you see that once you have critical knowledge or critical information, you can just sell it and you're going to be making money all over the place. You're going to be making money with your Zoom session here. You're going to make money with your video tutorials or your video library. I have a library on OneDrive, which is my storage in the cloud, 1 terabyte of space. That's 1,000 gigabytes. I'm selling all my video tutorials here. You can sell your applications. I've sold software programs for $100. You sell ebooks. I've sold ebooks for $30. I've taught at Taft College. So everything that I'm sharing with you here, I made money. So I know that these actually work. Okay. And so this is, the value of knowledge and information. And think of your critical knowledge here as a kind of, as a, how can I put it? As a candle. Okay. Suppose that you have a candle and you have the flame of that candle. And so the flame here, that's the knowledge. And it is the flame that is going out to people. You're not selling the candle, you're selling the flame. So what's happening when you're selling the flame? Well, something very interesting is happening because you get to keep the flame. And so here I'm going to talk about the candle analogy to help you to understand the difference between the old economy, the traditional economy, and the new abundant digital economy. So imagine that you have a candle here and it's wax, right? And if your candle, okay, let's just put a fire here. So knowledge is very much like a flame. Why? Because, people can come to you and they can go, hey, Peter, I see that you have a lit candle. Do you mind if I light my candle at your flame? And I would say, sure, no problem, man. And he can do that. She can do that. And, this can be multiplied by, 100 people who have a candle, but it's not lit. My candle is lit, right? You can see my flame here. It's lit. So I'm a lit candle. And people, they come, and 100 of people, 1,000, it could be like 10,000, it can be 1,000,000. I'm making money from all these customers, and I still keep my flame. Okay, that's the crazy part that people here in the traditional economy, they don't understand. They don't understand that the scarcity economy, when you sell your crypto, I don't care what crypto you have, Solana, Ethereum, Bitcoin, when you sell metal, silver, when you sell real estate, you don't have it anymore, right? And this is something Robert Allen understood. When he sells a house, okay, he makes a nice profit, but that's it. He cannot resell the house. But when he's selling a book that he wrote, when he's selling a video program, he can keep selling forever. Okay, this is, again, something that even smart people don't understand. Traditional asset classes, you are limited in your profits. Like investors who are making money, they understand the return, but they don't understand the mathematics. They don't understand that traditional assets are limited. They're scarce. They're not infinite. But look at my diagram here. There's no end to how much I can make from critical or useful knowledge. There's no end. There could be like 8 billion people on the planet who need my knowledge, and I would be making money from 8 billion people. Like even if I charge, theoretically, it's not practical, but even if I charge like $1 to 8 billion people, I would make $8 billion because my flame is not gonna go out, right? And that's what you have to understand. What you have to understand is that the traditional asset classes here, let me just make a bold claim here so that it's very clear to my multimillionaire investor friends. I'm happy for them, but they're never going to become billionaires. Okay, Why? Because here, traditional asset classes are like candle wax. You can only sell your candles, which is wax, once. You cannot sell it twice. But guess what? When you operate in the technology, information, the communications um, sectors, you're selling what? You're selling the flame, okay? And the flame can be shared infinitely. This is something people have to understand, because unless you've done that at least once in your life, you just don't know. I can be here teaching people for the next 10 hours, they still wouldn't get it. They still would try to defend the system that is suboptimal. Again, I'm not saying that this system doesn't work. Obviously they're multimillionaires, but here we're talking about a system where you can become billionaires. So it's an order of magnitude above this system. So there are investors here, they might want to become billionaires, but sorry, impossible. You can't become a billionaire when you operate in that space. I mean, for ordinary people, okay, for many other people like Sam Walton, um, they have become billionaires. People become billionaires through selling gold, or George Soros by using arbitrage in forex markets. That's a traditional asset. They can, but here we're going to see the future where more and more people will become billionaires when they shift to the technology, information, communications. And you can just see examples of how young people today with their startups, whether it's Replit, whether it's Cursor, whether it's Manis. OpenCloud was recently bought out by OpenAI. It was created by Peter Steinberger. It's a kind of open source AI agent system. And we don't know exactly how much OpenAI paid for OpenCloud, but it's probably over $1 billion. So you can see that all these young people, they get it. They understand that this is a new form of abundance. It's based on technology, and of course AI is the greatest technology ever invented. It's based on information. For example, Ted Turner with CNN, Oprah also. It's all about information, but information not in the form of books, right? Information in the form of videos and TV programs and live streaming. And there's communications. That's Mark Cuban with broadcast.com. Internet communications, and also social media. Think of Gary Vaynerchuk. I don't like his approach. I like him. I don't like his approach. It's too much of a hustle. But there's no doubt that Gary Vaynerchuk is a master of social media. Also, of course, the famous or the infamous Tai Lopez. The guy can be annoying, but you cannot dispute his success. Tai Lopez on social media. So social media, internet, live streaming, AI, all these new technologies, these new asset classes are somehow ignored, or they're not understood by the millionaires here in traditional asset classes. But my point is that if you're an ordinary person and you want massive wealth, and we're talking about billions of dollars, you want to be here because that's the fastest way. You cannot become a billionaire here. It takes time, So it's more like you're going to become a millionaire over here. You can't become a billionaire. So it's like Donald Trump said to Ivanka, his daughter. He said it when she was young, and this is reported. I don't know if it's true, but he said, Ivanka, in life to succeed, you're going to have to think. And you have to, and you're going to have to think hard. So if you're going to have to think, why not aim for billions of dollars instead of millions of dollars? In other words, we all have to work, but it's a question of leverage. If you're working on the right hand side with, technology, information, communications, you have really leverage. Okay, it's not labor. You have leverage, and therefore, whatever effort you make, it's going to be amplified. It's going to be amplified because these are leverage or levers. But here, you're operating in the physical economy. It's largely physical, but it's not just physical, because Bitcoin is not physical, right? It's physical, it's limited, it's artificial, scarcity. So for example, there's only going to be 21 million bitcoins, but that's artificial. It's algorithmic or mathematical scarcity, like Bitcoin. But you look at nature around you. Is there really scarcity when you look at the sun rays coming to you? Like less than 1% is reaching the earth. Is there limitations when you go to a forest? When you go camping, you see nature around you. When I look at the garden in the summer that I help my mother with, there are tons and tons of tomatoes coming out, and her biggest problem is that she has to give away those tomatoes because um, they have a limited shelf life. And so when I look at nature in my mom's garden, when you look at nature out there, when you look at the sun, when you look at the stars, do you have this feeling that the universe is limited? Of course not. The universe, growth, nature, it's unlimited. But on Earth, for some strange reason, we have created these traditional asset classes where we believe in scarcity. So I'm telling you, do not believe in scarcity. Do not believe in scarcity. Believe instead in infinite abundance. And once you shift your mind to infinite abundance over here, then the flame is going to go up on your candle. Remember, here it's just candle wax. If you're an employee, you're selling your time. Okay, employees sell their limited time. So in my case, for example, sure, I made $80 an hour, but there's no way I can teach for 40 hours a week. It's limited by definition because my time is limited. So I'm going to give you more and more distinctions so that you can begin to shift from the left hand side to the right hand side. But one trick, one hack I want to give you, and please write it down and put it somewhere on your fridge, on your forehead, on your underwear. But remember this, okay, guys, remember this. It's not about being paid $80 an hour or whatever amount of money you're making. Instead, you have to think about being paid $80 or whatever amount per how. Okay, so you're not making money because you're giving 1 hour of your time. You're making money because you're teaching people how to do something. Okay, so for example, if we go back to the critical useful knowledge here, once you know how to do something, so let me just put it down here so that it's very clear that people understand what I'm talking about here. How to produce a result consistently, reliably. So once you learn, and I have a whole live stream to teach, like, people on LinkedIn how to do this. Once you know how to produce a result that people want, and you can produce it with high reliability, it might not be 100%, but very high, like 99%, then you can teach and make so much money in all these different ways. But we're going to explore that later on. You have to produce a result, meaning that as long as you produce a result, then you can make money infinitely. So let's take the case, let's say, of somebody who learned options trading. He or she can produce a result, generate passive income from options trading, but it has to be an algorithm. It has to be deterministic. And the problem with investing is that it's never deterministic. It's always a probability. So you have to, and it could work. It could inspire people. I'm not saying it's not going to work, but to be on the safe side, you want to produce a result, and you want to be able to produce that result reliably, meaning that you have to prove to people that if they do what you do, they're going to be able to produce a similar result. So for example, you could be a tennis coach and your forehand is highly reliable, and you teach tennis to people. In fact, there was a guy, what's his name? Peter, forgot his name, but he's a Shark Tank in the UK. Not Shark Tank, Dragon's Den. What's his name? Very elegant guy, very tall guy. Anyways, he's a dragon. So when he was a student at college, he was teaching tennis, and he became quite rich by teaching tennis. I think he was teaching tennis to rich people, um, and he charged like hundreds of dollars. And same thing with Bruce Lee, who at the time he charged the equivalent of $2,000 per hour to famous celebrities. And so Bruce Lee and Peter, the Dragon's Den investor, these people, they know tennis. Bruce Lee knows kung fu or jeet kune do, and so as long as you know how to do something, and you have a clear algorithm or recipe or procedure, then you can teach other people. Famous chefs and cooks are doing the same. People who are yoga instructors. In my case, I teach email marketing. I teach project management. I teach online marketing research. I teach how to start a business because I've done that successfully. How to create information products because I've done that successfully. Anything that you've been able to do successfully and that you can replicate, that becomes your critical or useful knowledge. You can ask because you've done that over and over again. Like if I were to teach people, for example, how to create a college level course, I can do that because I've done it over and over again. I did it 7 times. It's, if you ask me to create a college level course regarding your topic, I would be able to do it, even though I have no experience in your field. But I can do it because creating a course is a matter of following what they call the the ADDIE framework, and that I'm going to teach in a future live stream. The ADDIE framework basically is where you analyze the needs of your students or target students. You design a curriculum, you develop the curriculum, you implement it, and then you evaluate, and then you keep repeating that cycle. And that's the secret to creating college level courses where I was making $80 an hour, and of course on Zoom I can make much more. But my point is that as long as you've produced a result that your customers want, and you've been doing it consistently, and you know the method, the procedure, the process, then you're going to succeed. And I just want to mention quickly here, as a note to myself, that it's a whole game. Okay, like people think that to make this money is easy, but it's not easy. But it's going to be much easier once I teach you. And I'm going to share quickly with you here. You start with a framework, and then from your frameworks, and I've done that for all of my courses and workshop. From your framework, you have a process, and then from your process, you have a procedure. In other words, step-by-step actions, and from your procedure, you have the results, and eventually you have the monitoring or the measurement system, and I call it the management system. But you got to start with the framework. Like it doesn't matter how successful you've become. Donald Trump, for example, was very successful as a real estate developer, but he didn't have a framework. So his Trump University failed. Maybe it failed because the advertising claims were false or whatever. But Donald Trump doesn't have a framework. His book, The Art of the Deal, I haven't read it. I browsed through it quickly. Maybe he has a framework for negotiation, but you need a framework, and then you create a process. And from your process, which is like more general, more template like, you get down to the procedure, which is really the step by step. So think of the process as a kind of architectural plan, and the procedure is more like the walls, the rooms. It's more concrete, and then you have the results, and then you have a management system that will help students to correct their mistakes when they're getting bad results. But it's because you have to assume, and I've had like 20 years of experience as a teacher and trainer and coach. You have to assume that they're going to get bad results, and that's normal. They're not a master like you. And so you have to give them a management system. This is what I give my calligraphy students as well, so that they can recognize and spot their own mistakes. And so over time, they're going to get better results. So here, in a way, this distinction, this dichotomy between traditional asset classes and the new techno information communications asset classes, this is my way of helping you to correct your mental models, your belief system. Because like I said, even highly successful multimillionaires are making the mistake of believing in the scarcity economy, and they will defend that mistake. And the reason why they're defending that mistake is that this is based on their ego. This is their ego, right? And the more successful they are, the bigger their ego. And so they will defend it. And so you try to help them, but it's not going to work out. They will defend their ego because they identify with the ego. So one of the steps that is needed is that you have to stop believing your ego and tell yourself, okay, I've been successful. That's great. I'm a multimillionaire. That's great. But I need to shift to the abundant economy because it can be even greater. And so you have, like, sometimes you have multi-millionaire people here, entrepreneurs. And so they decide to go towards the abundant economy. Peter Steinberger could be an example. Like, he made a 9-figure exit from selling a software company, and he came back and he participated in the AI economy. And Peter Steinberger is the creator of OpenClaw, and now it's worth over $1 billion. So he went from a 9-figure, is that 9-figure? No, actually, he went from a particular success that he had, and now he's more successful than ever because he embraced the abundant economy. So in the same way, you can see that even if you're successful here, you can face much greater successful over here, but you have to abandon, certain belief systems, certain definitions. But I'm not really concerned about the multimillionaire people here. I'm more concerned about the people who are not even successful in the scarcity economy. Okay, like, they're not rich, they're not millionaires. In fact, they're struggling in the scarcity economy. So for them, they're trying to look for a job, they're trying to buy Bitcoin, they're trying to do this. But I tell them, yeah, you can do that if you want, but I recommend instead that you embrace the abundant economy because it's the easier and the faster way to make money. I even, fun fact, I even try to capture the abundant economy in a portal that I created last year, and I'm going to develop this year. It's called Laser and Richer. And it's a little bit provocative, but I define laziness in a very specific way. But essentially, Laser and Richer is going to have systems and assets and resources and communities, etc., where people are lazier, but they're richer. In other words, they work less and less, but they make more and more money. Who would love that, right? And now with AI, with ecosystems, with new business models, with social media, automation, powerful computers, smartphones, you can get lazier and lazier, but at the same time get richer and richer. That's my ambitious goal, and it is possible with the abundant economy structure or belief system that I'm been teaching in the last 1 hour and 4 minutes. I mean, I could go on, guys. I mean, I've done so much research comparing and contrasting these two different economies. People, once again, they don't see the abundant economy, and you only see it, you only appreciate it when you start to operate from love and joy, and when you start sharing. Because in the scarcity economy, there is no sharing, okay? No sharing, okay? You can't share. Why? Because if I share with you my Bitcoin, or rather my Satoshis, if I share with you my car, my real estate, I don't have it anymore. So no sharing, absolutely forbidden. But here, you have to share. You have to share because it costs you nothing to share your candle flame, to share your knowledge. You have to start live streaming. You got to share. You got to show up online. You cannot be invisible. You cannot keep your privacy. You got to share. Everyone on the planet has to know my name. Everyone has to know who Super Peter is, what I'm trying to do. I have to open up. I have to be accessible. It's all about sharing. It's about, giving. And the more you give, the more you realize that you have more to give. And so if you remember only one idea from this live stream, it is that you have to start sharing. You have to, whatever it is, share your ideas, share your courses, share your knowledge, share your mistakes, share your best practices, whatever it is, you got to share. On LinkedIn, you may have 500 connections, you may have 5,000. Just share the best of what you have. Start sharing because it costs you nothing. This is what they call the zero marginal cost economy. Just going to put it here, and you can zero marginal cost. And you can read the book, the great book by Jeremy Rifkin, and he wrote the book, The Zero Marginal Cost Society. He wrote like a whole book explaining the abundant economy, basically. Um, just gonna put here some notes to myself because in the future I want to share with you these ebooks. There are many ebooks, Blur by Stan Davis. There's the Cybercorp Revolution by James Martin. You can read these books online, very affordable. We have Intellectual Capital by Thomas Stewart. I've studied these authors for years, in the last 20 years, and you have The Support Economy by Shoshana Zuboff. And so, the abundant economy is not something that I just came up with one morning, when I had too much coffee. It's really an entire theory about a new economy. And when you switch to the economy like I have, it's going to be so easy for you to make money from love, from joy, from passion, from sharing what you have. Because remember, the scarcity economy is a very selfish economy where everyone is looking for their own self-interest. Nothing wrong with that. It's selfish here. I don't mean selfish in a negative sense. I mean selfish in a sense that, what's in it for me? It's all about me. They call it the most popular radio station in the world is What's in It for Me, YIIFM, which is fine. But like I said, you can be successful in this selfish economy, or you can be 10 times more successful in this new economy that I would call the selfless economy, where you're sharing, and at some point people trust you, and then you have earned the right to sell something to them, and then you make profits. Now, even if, and that's a big if, even if in the abundant economy you make less money than people who are in the scarcity economy who invested in Bitcoin or real estate, even if that was the case, and I don't think it's the case at all, because remember, here you're selling candle wax, here you're selling the flame. Okay, fire spreads out more rapidly and is more infinite than candle wax. But even if this was the case, for example, I would still recommend the abundant economy because you're operating out of fear, out of love, out of joy, out of, what makes you unique as an individual, your passion, how your brain, your mind is wired, it's your chosen lifestyle. You're not forced to do anything. And this is what I have right now. I'm immensely successful because I own my life 100%, and that to me is success. I don't need money. I have passive income. I don't, I have freedom. And this is my value number one: freedom, excellence, innovation, service, and time. And so I've shifted from the scarcity economy to the abundant economy, but it took me some time, a number of years, but hopefully through these live streams, I can introduce you to a new abundant economy, because trust me, guys, I've read like over 1,000 nonfiction books. Never, ever have I read a book that talks specifically about the abundant economy in a technical way that I'm doing here. Some people, Peter Diamandis, talks about abundance and his books focus on it, but I'm talking about a new world. I'm talking about changing your perspective, where you're transforming yourself from someone who is focusing on trading to someone who's focusing on sharing. Because again, nothing wrong with trading. If you sell a book, a print book, if you sell clothing, if you sell a haircut, if you sell food, That's trading, and you should have a markup, you should have profits. But sharing is so much better, because when you're sharing, you know, you go all over the place. Your flame from your candle is gonna spread like wildfire, literally, and you can make so much money in so many ways. But to do what I've been able to do, you have to really change your mind. You cannot stay in the, like here, it's almost like North Vietnam. You cannot stay in a limited artificial scarcity environment and hope to meet with success over here. Okay, you have to make a shift from the scarcity to abundance, and it's not a physical shift. It's not like something you have to change in your house, or have to wear new clothes and buy a new computer. It's really a mental shift. So it's easy. That's the good news. But the difficult part is that it's mental. You don't see your mind, you don't see your ego, and so you will tend to have like a strong uh, definition and beliefs. And anyone who tries to change your mind, you're going to see that as an attack on your ego, on your belief system. And this is one of the things you have to understand. When people take it personally and they defend their point of view, it's because their ego is involved. But if you put your ego aside and you look at your system and you understand what I'm explaining here, and it's quite rational, and you can see, for example, and this is just one of the distinctions, you can see that obviously, when you have knowledge and you can share it in different ways, you make money. That is kind of obvious, but like, you know people here, they just don't see that. So let me just draw a diagram that is very simple, and I will gently explain to them um, how it works. So once you have knowledge, okay, once you have knowledge, and it's going to be a spiral. That's why, like, it's not a closed circle. It's going to keep growing, and I'm going to teach people how to do that. But essentially, once you have knowledge um, in your head, so let's say this is the knowledge in your head, and anyone who has a job has valuable knowledge. It's not enough to have knowledge in your head and offer it as a service and make money, although that is where people start. But that's not the right way. The right way is that you have to export your knowledge into different um, formats, different what I'm gonna call it, different artifacts that other people can have access to. So, for example, here it could be, I don't know, could be a book. As long as you verbalize it, as long as you export it, and you make it cross the barrier here, the barrier which is your head, and this barrier is only 6.5 millimeters, because that's the thickness of your skull. As soon as knowledge crosses that 6.5 millimeter barrier, and it becomes a book, it becomes a Zoom session, and you invite people, it becomes let's say a YouTube video you put on YouTube or Facebook, it becomes let's say a blueprint, it becomes a web application or mobile application of some kind. It can even become like a video game. It's possible to teach through a video game. It becomes mind map. Sometimes I use myro.com. I also use FreeMind, which is an open source mind mapping software. It becomes, I don't know, a template, becomes a Python program, and you can sell the source code as well. It becomes a textbook, which is a more advanced ebook. It becomes a report. It becomes a newsletter. I have like over 100 different formats that you can create based on your knowledge. So there's 1 billion people on LinkedIn who have knowledge. Most of them have valuable knowledge, but 99.999% of them, they ignore the fact that they can create all these artifacts, all these objects, so that other people can benefit. And once you create all these physical, tangible, or digital artifacts so that people can benefit from your knowledge, you're making money. So you're going to be making money from Zoom. You're going to make money from your books. You're going to make money from your blueprints, make money from your apps. Everywhere you go, you make money. Like in my case, I just have to speak and I make money because people, when they hear me speak, they know right away, okay, this guy is super smart in terms of business, marketing, sales, technology. They realize that right away, you know. And if they don't, I'm gonna make sure I convince them. But I don't have to convince. I just share my valuable knowledge, and you know, in the same way you share your knowledge, and people will start paying you. But you have to share first, right? You share your knowledge, and people they go, okay, this guy is smart. I should pay him. You know, so you share. You're not selling. You're sharing, and after that, you know, people know that you're the expert, and then you can sell and they can buy. But you can see here that it's quite logical. Knowledge is where you got to start. There are so many people who are successful, but they keep the knowledge in their heads and they're leaving a lot of money on the table. Why? It's because they haven't done it. But most likely it's because they're protecting their ego, right? They believe in scarcity. My way is the only way, and they're not open to new ways to make money. But I don't really care about rich people. I care about the people who are financially struggling here, and so they don't have an ego, and so they're more likely to follow me and learn from my live streams, and they start to adopt the abundant economy, meaning that they focus on um, they focus they focus on, you know, technologies, information, knowledge, and communication, social media. These are the people who are going to, and they tend to be young, but you know, they can be of any age. These are the people who understand the new economy, the abundant economy, and they focus on these asset classes, and they're going to make a lot of money in a very short period of time. In the same way that these people have become billionaires, except that in their cases, you know, it might have taken years. In your case, it might take just a few months before you become a millionaire. And once you become a millionaire, you don't have to become a billionaire, because what's going to happen when you shift to the abundant economy is that you can see the chart. So for example, you're going to be able to see, let's do a chart. You're going to be able to see that your sales, okay, at the beginning, they're very low. They're very low. And then at some point, you're going to see a spike, and then it's going to go almost exponentially. And so that's, you know, that's how it's going to work. And once you start to make money from your knowledge, because you're teaching, because you're live streaming, because you're creating video products, you're creating products, ebooks, with the help of large language models, then there's no stopping you. So maybe here, you know, maybe you're just gonna make, I don't know, just let's say 200K, right? But you went from zero. You went from zero, and you're making 200K in a matter of months. So obviously you can see that you can go further into the future, right? Because like I said, this is one of the happiest thought of my life. Um, you can see that there's no limit. You're going to become a millionaire, and eventually you're going to have tens of millions of dollars and hundreds of millions of dollars once you understand that. You just have to sell your knowledge. And so I just want to conclude with this. One of the happiest thought of my life, or insight, is that there is a difference between selling your wax, which was basically what I was selling, um, you know, before I started teaching at TAF, like, you know, 20 years ago. I was selling in the 1990s, I was selling my services, and this is the wax. This is when you're selling um, your time. And one of the happiest, most profitable insight I want to share with you is that you have to shift from selling your time to selling your knowledge. And that means your flame. Okay, you have to shift from the wax over here to the flame over here. Why? Because once you have identified your critical knowledge, which is useful to you, and therefore it's going to be useful to other people, then you can share your flame with so many other people. Like, we're talking about potentially 8 billion people, because today with artificial intelligence, you can translate in multiple languages. And so you sell the flame, and when you sell the flame, you still keep the flame. But guess what? When you sell your wax, when you sell your time, you don't have it anymore. And so time is the the ultimate resource when you think about it. Don't sell your time. You know, because it's going to be very limited in terms of income. You can only work 8 hours, and that's a stretch. Most people are only productive like 3 hours maximum. The rest of the time, they're just shuffling paper, they're gossiping with their coworkers, and so your time is very limited. You want to sell your knowledge here. So don't get paid per hour. Like we said, don't get paid. Wait a minute, what is that? Don't get paid per hour, but get paid by uh, how you've been able to achieve the results that you've achieved. So when you look at your life, obviously you're successful in at least one way that other people admire. In my case, it's calligraphy. It's how to create a college level course, how to create an ebook, how to edit in Camtasia, how to do automation in MailerLite. I've learned how to do many things. I was a little bit of a serial skiller, not killer. I was a serial skiller, learning tons of software programs, learning on my own, learning how to code. So as long as you learn how to do something, then you can teach other people. Just focus on learning how to do something. Actually do it. Like, do it and practice it until you master it. Like the example I provided earlier, where in 60 days I was able to lose 10 to 12 pounds. This is something I did twice. And so that's why I'm writing ebooks and I'm creating videos on how people can do the same. Obesity is a big problem in North America, and I can easily help people to solve that problem with intermittent fasting. So it took me only 60 days to master that skill. And it's a how that I can teach people, not in terms of time, but in terms of how. In other words, the knowledge that you've acquired because you've practiced something. So for me, that's the shortest amount of time, 60 days, for me to develop a specific how. But afterwards, I can sell in so many different product formats. So anyways, guys, I'm going to end it here. But hopefully in this live stream, you're able to understand that your knowledge is the most valuable thing you have. You should really externalize and make it explicit and start packaging it so that you can sell it. Why? Because that will allow you to move from the scarcity economy to the abundant economy, where you can just live your ideal, your dream life, and you express love, joy, you express what is unique about you, you express your passion, and you're helping people. And as you're helping people by sharing, you're going to make so much money that your new problem is going to be, how am I going to spend all this money that I'm making? Okay, so that's really what I wanted to share with you. So please, if you have questions, I'm more than happy to answer them. Just put them in the comments below and I will answer quickly. All right, see you in the next live stream.